had a meeting about a month ago. The comments were overwhelmingly in support of some sort of zoning for the Evaro area. We feel that the billboards and the billboards are, I can't talk. The billboards are ruining the scenic view in Evaro. Put it plain and simple. And the only way we can stop the billboards is to zone Evaro.
The areas in the county that are zoned happen to typically be those areas that are near the Missoula urban area. But county zoning also goes all the way down to section 9, I believe, in the Meadows of Barron and Keith on the east side of the road. And the west side of the road is unzoned. The other thing about the county zoning is that there are provisions for special rural districts, and there are a few of them in the county that are similar I think, in formation to citizen-initiated zones, but they're tied to the county zoning resolution and require zoning compliance and things like that, that allow you all to specify, for example, different types of land uses that can take place and different types of setbacks, location of buildings, types of signage that could be included in those areas, so that signs that could be allowed could have a very specific size and location. And this may be of something of interest to you all in terms of tailoring the design of some form of land use control that is Evaro community land use control.
How come we're already on to zoning? Is it not possible to pass an ordinance in Missoula County that either restricts size or bans billboard advertising?
Zoning has to take place.
You have to be zoned first?
Yeah, to deal with.
You can't have a county-wide ordinance that do that?
You could, but it's going to have to be under the auspices of the zoning authority. It's part of the police power that the state and county has, and that's the mechanism by which it has to occur.
Counties don't have a great deal of ordinance-making powers. Cities do. And there's a difference in how counties approach their powers, which are zoning power, planning. Essentially, those are the two powers, than the way cities do.
So basically, though, what we're doing tonight is will only affect Evaro. I mean, we can't do anything about what's happening on 90, and obviously billboards being constructed along 90.
If it's on private property, I don't think that we or the state can control it. That's on, except for zoning. But if it's on state right-of-way, then I think they have specific allowance.
Yeah.
May I ask the tribal representative something? Do you have any rules or laws or things about billboards in the tribal areas?
Basically, from my understanding, the tribes have a policy with regard to concerns for the scenic amenities of the reservation. However, some of that policy is in draft form, and so basically, I can only say that I'm here to say that the tribes are concerned about the situation, but as far as any specifics on the situation, I can't give those tonight. I'm not a tribal councilman, and I can't speak for the tribes. I'm just a planner.
We have had a study done by a person with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, which we didn't pay for, but which we've benefited greatly from, that tells and has identified the migration corridors from the Sealy Swan area over the mountain and into this area that we are looking very strongly to trying to protect so that the wildlife has the capability of passing back and forth through this corridor. We do care about the wildlife, and we certainly are pleased to see that you have some comments in your goals that address that. We're also looking to work with the State Department of Highways from Hamilton to Whitefish to put together a proposal that will address the gateway corridor along the highways. It will help to provide some rules, if you will, and it's in the embryo stage at this point, so it's hard to say exactly what will result. But the point of it is to make it an aesthetically pleasing corridor from Hamilton to Whitefish. In that, I would assume there will be some concerns about billboards. We will still have to follow the laws, and what someone puts on private property, unless it's zoned, we may have no way to control that. But we are interested in it. I also want you to know that in regards to citizen-initiated zoning, we don't have very many of those zones in the county, and we would certainly welcome people doing that. But I want you to know up front that when you initiate the process and you bring us something, we are under no obligation to pass only that which you bring us. We can change it, we can add to it, we can take out from it, based on a lot of things. So I don't want you to think that if you bring us a citizen-initiated zoning package, that we're going to pass it exactly as you bring it to us, because there may be reasons why we can't, or through experience know that, for instance, in Patty Canyon, there is the term, no one can do anything that disturbs the natural physiography. We will never use that word again, because it has caused us nothing but problems in trying to decide what is okay in that zone in the way of building and what is not. And I don't mean to discourage you from doing citizen-initiated zoning. I think it's a very important process, and we certainly encourage you to do that, because it will help us to know what you want, and with the help of the staff, we can help you to get what you're after.
Actually, if I could just back up a few steps, what I'd like to do is make sure everybody knows what's already been done from, say, the Y to the county line, which is not a great deal, but just to bring us all up to what we have in place and what is existing in terms of any kind of land use plan. What was done is in 1975, Missoula adopted its first county comprehensive plan, and that plan, I'll show you. If you can kind of pick out our areas between the Y and Evaro, it's on a very small scale, and I'll try to describe what it says because you're not going to see much. It's basically right at the Y area, you've got some commercial designated on that eastern side, on the right-hand side when you just leave the highway. And all the white space is an open and resource land, which suggests one dwelling unit per 40 acres. And I'm sure that's not the pattern around here, but this is what the plan had said at that time. As you move on up to Evaro, you have a lighter green area, which got 1 to 2. On the side here.
Yeah, rural density, one dwelling per 10.
Per 10. Okay, so when you get into the Evaro area, it looks at a little higher density of one dwelling unit per 10 acres with a small dot. You're not going to see it, but it says commercial also in that area. And then as you move farther north on the county line, you see some more green spots, which also suggest a 1 to 10. Then around, well, following the 1975 plan, there was some zoning done to comply with this plan in Missoula County, but most of it was focused on the urban area. The only area that's anywhere in this corridor that I just described that is zoned is on that eastern side of the Y again, where we have the commercial designation. We have some commercial zoning over there. On the west side, it's specifically unzoned, and as you move further north, there's no zoning.
One of the ways that zoning takes place is that people in the community request it. And the first step is a group getting together and deciding what that community wants to be. Where does it want to have commercial activity if it wants to have commercial activity? What kinds of residential densities and types of residential densities does it want to have? Where should industry be? And those are what form the plan. The next step is that people get together and say, okay, and now we want to do this. We want to form either a zoning district or implement this plan. And it really takes the planning first and then the implementing of that plan second. But very often it happens at the request of the landowners, either large property owners who look to some sort of future planning for their land, or groups of people who say, okay, we want to implement this plan, we want to put it together, we want to see that it works. And that request is then made to the Board of County Commissioners, and they make a decision on the form of that implementation of that plan. And that second step, which is the implementing step, hasn't been taken, hasn't been initiated by the people who own the land, and has not been directed essentially by the planning board to the Board of County Commissioners to say, zone this land. We're doing a project right now where we have probably 20 citizens who have various areas of expertise, from wildlife biologists to people who deal with groundwater, who are helping form the plan for this community, to look at the resources, to look at the suitability of the area for different types of land uses. In that case, we can put something together fairly fast, given that our staff commitment to that is fairly small. We work for these people here. So if they direct us through our boss to put this at the front, of other things that are currently in our work plan, then things can happen within, 6 months or a year. And it could come in the form of a plan. It could come in the form of a plan with built-in kinds of regulations for land use at the same time, if it were tailored that way, if it were designed that way to begin with, as part of a work program. But it would require the commissioners, I think, to determine that this was, something that was of a level of importance to get us to do it.
Whether we would make a decision to go for full-time permanent zoning now and proceed in that vein, versus if we would have that in the back of our heads that actually is what we want to do, but we're going to go for interim zoning because that will be faster, quicker, and then we can hold on that while we proceed for the other. Which is the best route and the most immediate?
Well, I think the most immediate would be to do some sort of interim zoning.
All right, then the next question I would ask would be, give me 3 steps of what I need to do, what everybody needs to do here to go for interim zoning, because that's what I believe the majority here are interested in doing at this point. I mean, we all do have a long-term goal, but we want the most immediate action possible. So what do we need to have on a piece of paper to walk in to ask for intermediate zoning?
I guess, I think that what you need to have to ask for interim zoning is going to be, from a legal point of view, it's going to be a matter of bringing enough information to the commissioners about what it is that the community wants to do that will allow them to satisfy the legal requirements that are a part of the interim zoning. And what it says is that if the county is conducting or in good faith intends to conduct studies within a reasonable time, or has held or is holding a hearing for the purpose of considering zoning regulations. That's really vague and broad. And I think that to kind of clear it up, to kind of make sure that we don't have a legal problem with it later, that what we need to look at from the county's point of view is that this is identified as a work project and that money has been apportioned to fund it, so that there's a commitment within the appropriate departments to get this done. But before that can happen, you have to talk to commissioners what it is that you want to do. How big an area are you talking about? What kind of stuff do you want to include or not include? And now we don't, excuse me, the commissioners, and they may know more than understand it, but I don't think anybody has a clue about what folks here really do want to do. My understanding is that there's a group of people that have come forward and expressed interest, and we don't know the depth of the interest. We don't know what you're thinking in terms of the boundaries, and that's all information that has to come from you to them.
So I think our point here is that, we're taking steps here that affect not only us, but the long-term reach of our children. And I think that, when you go to a committee, people might have the initial desire, they have one thing on their mind, but at this point now it encompasses many things. There's all kinds of things we have to think about, and so it's going to take time. Take you time to do lots of things, and that's the way it should be.
In the many years that I've been in the county commissioner's office, we have never had anybody come in and say, we want to zone an area. So this is kind of breaking new ground for us. What we do when someone wants to do a rural special improvement district, which takes a lot of administrative time, a lot of staff time, money, we do not agree to initiate an RSID process unless we have, in the defined area that someone wants to put this improvement district, a petition with 60%, 50%, the percentages all blurred together for me, but let's say 50% of the people who live in the area has to sign a petition saying that they want us to do this SID, so that we know it has a chance of passage, that there isn't going to be a successful protest once we spend the time and the money and the effort to put it together. And we have not, as a board, decided how to handle this. We have both your area and Lowell that at this point are interested. It makes sense to me that when you have determined, either with the help of the staff or by getting the feeling of the people in the area that you want to include, makes sense to me that we have some manifestation of that interest, whether it's a petition with 50% of the signatures in the district to let us know you want us to proceed. And the reason I'm suggesting that as a possible, and again, that's not definite because we haven't discussed how to go about this yet, is because we would be committing a lot of time, a lot of money, and in order to be willing to do that, you have to recognize you're going to be competing with every other request for county money. And we know you're important, and we know what you want is important, but so is everything else that everyone else is asking for. So, in my mind, before we say we're going to commit the resources in the planning department, whether it includes additional personnel or putting something else on the back burner, I think we're going to want to know how serious you are, and that when the process is done, you're going to want to adopt it. We don't want to be another rattlesnake, 2.5, 5, however many years it is later down the road, and we're still battling about it and nothing has been accomplished. We don't want to do that. We'd rather use our money and our staff to better advantage than that, which doesn't answer your question, but it does give you a little of the concerns that we have.
Yeah, I was wondering, everybody seems to be mentioning about a community and a certain area. Has anyone determined the area and the boundaries of the Evaro community itself, and how many people actually own property in the area so that you can base your 60% or 70% on that number of people?
No, the boundary has not been determined. That's what these meetings are for. We've had responses from beyond Lake County to and comments from people, down to the line. So that's part of the process. The first thing we got to do is determine the boundaries with the help of staff. We'll do that with the comments of the people. We'll do that.
I was wondering what the commissioner's opinion would be as far as how to approach it. Do we start off small and try to get that course organized, or do we try to encompass everything from the Y up to Dirty Corners?
I have written a little squib here that Peter said just might work. I think what we can do to assist you in the beginning is to give you some types of zoning that you could consider. You don't need urban type zoning, but there are some types that you need, and you need to just know what those imply for your area. You need to look at those, and you need to understand your topography, where your limits are with your steep slopes and your floodplains. You need a number of neighborhood meetings and maps to mark on and to agree. You need to know who owns property and what's already there, how it's already developing, with several, and I don't want to say 3 and I don't want to say 10, meetings that you commit yourself to work with one another and to say, look, this is already an area that looks commercial. This is already something that looks like the start of a subdivision. We would like to protect this for whatever reason, because there's habitat there. We want to protect the wildlife. You have to agree about that. Then you can bring it to us and we can look at it, but we can't impose it on you. You need to deal with your own diversity, and you're going to find out how diverse you are.
Since you're talking about the commercial, between here and the Y, commercial business, I suppose I'm not classified as commercial, but I am the first industrial business on this road north of the interstate, period. I was there before any of those truck stops there, any of them other shops, all along there, either side. How is that gonna, am I gonna hold that condition or what?
I don't think that's for us to say.
What?
That's not for us to say. It is for the community and for you. You are a very diverse community. There will be give and take if you're going to live together and if you're going to come to an agreement. You see, that's what's really hard about government, isn't it?
Well, I'd say
folks would like government imposed when they would like those regulations. But they would like to have their say when they don't like it.
well, you said on your chart there, from the Y this way, you already got it classified as industrial.
No, no, it didn't say that.
Huh?
It didn't say that, no. It just said that they had a little area right there at the Y that was commercial.
It's only at the Y.
Only at the Y. Only at the Y.
That's what I'm trying to say. I had a commercial business going before anybody.
You'll be grandfathered.
Was doing that.
Those things need to be worked out in your community meetings.
I have a question specifically about billboards. Is this
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Yeah, let's ask about Billboard.
On this handout, it talks about billboards, and the first thing it says, Evaro being unzoned, we are under the regulations of the Montana Annotated Code, and it gives the number. And I'm wondering if we can find out if there are any violations against these. It seems like the first one, being within 600 feet of an existing commercial activity. It doesn't seem like all of the billboards fall into that. And I'm wondering if we can do a study, get some people out there to measure them and see if they fit the codes that are already established. And if that might not be a faster way to at least stop some of them from going up and maybe take some of them down.
It's my understanding that the billboards permits are issued, and there is a person from the Department of Transportation to make sure that those are in code, and they're required to check them once a year, whether or not they do. It would be a good idea to seek their records and see how often they have gone out there. To the 600-foot stuff, as far as Evaro is concerned, I'm not sure about the two billboards up here, but the ones down the base of the hill, there are several businesses, able enterprises that I'm sure qualify for those billboards to be within 600 feet. But it would be a good idea to check out
Whether they meet the size requirements and all of that stuff. I'd like to know that, because I think that would be a faster avenue of stopping.
Yeah, and as far as measuring up, I guess you would be imposing yourself on the landowners unless you can do it in the right way to highway, I suppose. Ernie, can you comment on that?
All the billboards that are going up are legal.
Beg pardon?
I have checked the zoning compliance records myself. All of them are permitted through zoning compliance, and all of them have state permits. except for the ones on the reservation, and there's no permits required on the reservation.
And they all meet this code?
They are all below the state codes. State codes, those billboards could be twice the size they are.
It kind of looks to me like zoning is going to open a can of worms. Why do we have to have zoning just to put a restriction on any additional billboards?
State.
The state functions by federal funding, and those are primarily, most of the state's codes come down from Lady Bird Johnson laws that were, I use that term loosely, but they come down, were passed down from that time period in the early 70s. And if those billboards don't meet, the state has like a 4-man crew in the Missoula area. Each person has an area that they work, and every one of them has to be inspected before they'll issue a permit. And obviously the state doesn't want any of them out there that aren't legal because they can lose their federal funding on road projects.
Let me read to you what this little brochure that the State Highway Department sent to me says. The law does not prohibit advertising signs. It just puts limitations on where they may be placed, how close together and how big they can be, how they may be illuminated, and how they must be maintained. Basically, signs may be placed in areas that are either zoned for commercial or industrial use, or unzoned, but within 600 feet of a full-time commercial or industrial enterprise. Signs must be at least 500 feet apart along interstate highways and at least 300 feet apart along primary highways. They cannot be closer than 500 feet from a park, national forest boundary, highway rest area, or from an interstate highway interchange. Signs may vary in size but cannot be larger than 40 by 60 feet. Signs may be illuminated provided they do not imitate traffic signals nor impair drivers' visions. In addition, there are other details which may be important for your particular sign. These details are impossible to explain or illustrate in this simple brochure, but are available when you apply for a permit. I guess I would like to know, all the stuff that we have seen indicates to me that your major area of concern is the billboards, and I would like to know by a show of hands, is there anyone here, and to make it easy, whose major interest is not the billboards?
Put your hand up.
She's not a sister in law. I've been talking back to her. You gotta rephrase it.
Are you only interested in billboards or are you interested in other stuff?
The concern is more than just billboards, it's the urban decay and
Density of homes.
Billboards is probably just the thing that brought us all together.
Right, that's right. That was the problem.
We see that happening, and we want to do something about that, but we want to do something about all of it.
Well, as I said before, I know that the tribes are concerned about all of these issues: land use, density, signage, aesthetics, wildlife. There are many issues that the tribes are concerned about in this area. The tribes are looking at developing a study right now for the whole Highway 93 corridor through the reservation. And that study, we would hope, would correlate with other studies that are being done along the Highway 93 corridor. Transportation planning is really critical at this point because of the proposed expansion of Highway 93. And I think that one of the issues that the tribes raised in that environmental impact statement development process was what are the land use impacts of an expanded or proposed expanded highway. So we're hoping that this study would address those issues as well as some of the other wildlife and signage concerns. But this is in the proposal stage, and so there's nothing formalized yet.
I guess I'd be willing to ask the tribal council, and that's no guarantee that they would agree or that even that they should agree, that if you ask us to do interim zoning, and if we decide that that's a good idea, and if it's at least focusing additionally on the corridor, I'd be willing to, if the commissioners wish, deal with the tribes and ask them if they would also impose some interim moratoriums or something along the highways if it's the billboards that at this moment are the major concern. Do you agree with that? If you don't agree with that, you say so.
I think you work well with it, and I'm pleased with what's been done. I'm wondering, though, if we can't say, and I need all the staff and Barbara to confirm, say you're way off, if we can't say that you're ready to begin some land use planning, you're ready to start your meetings in the community and work through the zoning issues, you will find, I believe, as you begin to work, where your area will fall out best. You will find that, you don't have support somewhere and you may reduce your area, or that you do have support somewhere and you'll go further in your area. It will take several to many meetings for you to get through that.
The county has a section in its zoning resolution on billboards. In that section, there is a clause that talks about historic and scenic areas having a provision for special sign regulations in those areas. But it's for areas that are zoned in the county. So without the area being zoned in the county, even if it's a special district, which would be the special Evaro zoning district, and that were determined even that this area were a scenic area or a scenic and historic value, you would still have to have some form of county zoning on it.
I'm playing the devil's advocate here, but the root part of our problem here is the growth of people. If you made the highways all ugly, nobody'd want to move here. And then we'd just be our little community, and right behind our mess, we'd have all our free land. The more beautiful we make it, the more people we get moved here, because they think it's a beautiful place to go. We might be creating our own problem here. We might think about this.
There's another provision in the county zoning resolution for billboard plazas, and you could indeed create a zoning district that was solely for billboards. And you could have, scenes of Los Angeles on one side and scenes of Manhattan on the other side. And I think that might solve some problems in that regard.
The reason I put this in is this historic scenic thing. If we do go through a zoning process, I'm sure some parts or all of Highway 93 would be zoned some type of commercial. And land that is zoned commercial can't have billboards on it, and that kind of defeats the purpose. And I was hoping that we could use this clause to limit or even prevent any billboards in the commercial area. I don't know the legal status of that. That's why I threw that in, to make everybody aware that doesn't exist.
Well, if the property is zoned, will that take care of the junkyards?
What do you mean by junkyard?
Something we talked about grandfather. So if we go through the whole process of zoning, what will happen to the billboards that are already out?
Defined as non-conforming uses. There are, I guess you could just answer that, Phil, but can you put in your zoning plan that after so many years, these would have to go down and be purchased?
It might cost money
Yeah.
to do that. A lot of times when we zone, we just provide for the uses that are already there that don't need the zoning to be non-conforming uses, and it at least controls future growth, but it doesn't take away the uses of property that are already being utilized.
I think this goes along with her question, and I guess it's the thing that I find frustrating is that even if we were able to come up with a petition right now saying that the majority of us are against billboards, for example, in the process of the time that it's going to take to jump through all these hoops that we're going to have to jump through, we all know what's going to happen. There's going to be a bunch more billboards go up, and they're going to go up even faster because they know that we're in the process of jumping through these hoops to try and get some kind of legislation passed to stop. And my feeling is, and hearing what I'm hearing from you folks, is that there's absolutely nothing we can do about that. I guess that's my question. Is that right?
Unless you talk to me.
Well, that's right.
Well, if the state already agreed to it and give them permits, what are you gonna do?
I don't think that there's anything that we can do unless perhaps we could come up with some money to purchase them. And they might be willing to sell them. I'm putting that as kind of a layout idea. You might not be able to what you already have, but interim zoning could deal with preventing others. As I've been told recently, there's already been permits granted for 5 or 6 additional signs.
That was going to be my question. How many permits have been issued for the Evaro Hill area?
I think I heard 6, but
Can I ask Mr. Otopolis how many he has been issued?
It's the highway department position.
The Department of Transportation, Missoula, Dan Wall, Wales, he says there's 9 of them issued. And so we have 5 that are already up. Well, I also got that information from Bud Hedge, the Office of Community Development.
So you have some that are already granted, some that are already up, but if you want to prevent further ones, they could be prevented by interim zoning. We could do the interim zoning. We'd have to have hearings, we'd have to have a clear feeling what you want. But you need to understand one of my concerns about doing that is, one, it lasts only 1 year by law. It can be extended for 1 more year, correct me if I'm wrong, Philip. But I would not want to do that if that's the only thing you want to do. I mean, I'm really pleased that you want to do some additional other things to protect your area. And that's why I asked if that was the only thing you wanted was the
Look like a bill.
Is there any kind of, I mean, even this interim thing you're talking about is apparently going to take a little time. You can drill half a dozen holes in the ground, put up, begin construction of a billboard, and actually probably finish one in a day if you really set your mind to it. And we'd still be losing in that case. This gentleman said if they decided they better get on the ball, beat them at the game, then, they can have these things in. Am I right? Before we can ever get any interim protections or some kind of stay that can be set in motion immediately?
There's one thing that they have indicated they might be willing to consider, and that is in this brochure where it says that if there is a full-time commercial or industrial enterprise within 600 feet of an unzoned area, that you can put up a sign. Nowadays, as I understand it, if the business is on one side of the street, you can put the sign on either side of the street, and I think they're willing to look at only allowing it on the side of the street where the business is. So that's one little concession. I don't know how far they'd be willing to go, or legally whether they can do anything other than what their rules say.
Well, we could go to the legislature then. I mean, that's a whole nother route, but that's where this starts.
This year's legislation is fake.
And that's why a lot of the billboards that you see on Highway 90, for example, are sitting down there right now because they put them up as fast as they could. And interestingly enough, and this is something that I'm curious about, is all of these billboards that I see around here, I've seen only like one that has any advertising on it. Is there anything that has, where's the need, I guess, is my curiosity, and is there anything that we can approach from that point of view? Follow what I'm saying.
Marty, let me ask you a question. Is there such a thing, or could we stretch the statutes far enough to do an interim gateway designation that would address signs, etc.? And I think we would probably fit the rules in regards to planning and long-range obligations that we would be doing on this, so that not just in this area, but maybe Lowell or wherever they ask for the gateway designation along the highway, that we might be able to zone against signs or to limit the size or something, just on a zone by zone gateway designation?
I just started working on doing some fairly in-depth research on billboards, and as is often the case when at least I begin doing legal research, I'm sort of horrified at the number of possibilities for creating loads of litigation, which I would like to avoid. I think right now, the way I would answer that question is that I think the best way to avoid major legal problems would be, if you were going to do that, to do it on all the gateways and not just one. And I think that with that caveat, that would be possible.
And I think that might be the way to go if there were enough support to do that.
But I wouldn't single out just one that will cause people.
Okay, Sue has.
Well, my concern was mainly with the groundwater and the sewage. You know, at the Y, they have this trailer park, which we're worried about visual pollution. They've got raw sewage on the ground. These trailers have nowhere to go, and they can't even bathe. And we're sitting up here complaining about visual
Yeah,
pollution.
that's in their area. It's not in my area. They can take care of their own area.
And that's what I'm concerned about. I think our priority should be water and sewage.
But right now, the priorities are billboard and decay.
That's your
Really, our problem is people. And our real serious problem is the more people we have, the more problems we're going to have. Eventually we'll have crime, we'll have all
But
kinds of
first,
other
we start
problems.
with the billboards and the decay ordinance and see what we can do there.
What do you call them, decay?
Yeah.
Decay, the junk at the bottom of the hill,
The jump at the bottom of the hill, that will be there when you're in the grade.
maybe.
That's how they
That
make their
is
living.
not decay.
It's a business there.
It's a business.
That's how they make their living.
It's how they make their living.
Excuse me, could someone just do the definition of the decay ordinance for us, please?
This is a good time for us to jump in.
Because the opposition is
The reason that, would you give them a brief description of what we are allowed to do legally?
At the beginning.
You leaving in?
So you read these.
Almost as strong as other billboard.
Okay, Missoula County is what's known as a general powers county, and what that means is that the county, through its commissioners, may exercise authority and enact ordinances as they are granted authority to do so by the legislature. So the legislature enacted some enabling legislation to address the problem of what they defined as community decay. That provided a definition about what community decay was, provided some general outlines of what the ordinance could say, and set the maximum penalty. Missoula County enacted a community decay ordinance, and following those guidelines. If we have a definition of community decay that's pretty lengthy, and maybe instead of reading the whole thing, I'll just maybe summarize it for you. It means a public nuisance that's created by allowing rubble, debris, junk, or refuse to accumulate that results in conditions that are injurious to health, indecent, offensive to the senses, or which obstruct the free use of property so as to interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or the values of property. Then it goes on to say some more things about specifically what community decay is not. And that includes, among other things, persons who are servicing, manufacturing, or processing materials, goods, or products on lots in public view, so long as the materials are neatly stacked or organized. I have within the last, I guess Friday, I received about 18 complaints signed by, I think, 9 different people addressing billboards through the community decay ordinance. asking that the people that erected billboards be prosecuted under community decay ordinance. We can't do that. So I sent out 9 letters saying, we can't do that. I've also received yesterday a whole bunch of complaints about 2 areas, the Evaro Hill, and I'll be processing those this week.
Processing, it means what, Marty?
Reviewing them and filing complaints in court. Oh, yeah.
Well, can I ask you a very direct question then? Do the conditions on coming up Everett Hill, do they qualify in this decay ordinance, in your opinion? Since you just saw them obviously when you drove up here.
I'm filing a complaint in justice court based on my belief that I have probable cause to do so, and the complaints that I received, and it'll be up to a judge or a jury to answer that question.
But I talked to you before about this, and every time I tried to clean it up, I had some clown on the neck. And maybe mine is going to stay there till I get a little cooperation.
Barbara, I would like to go back to a comment that you made that I got very excited about, and we passed over and went on to perennial streams. But in the meantime, you know, we're looking for the big picture. But in the meantime, just as this gentleman said, in 3 weeks, if we start holding our hearings and do our public meetings and so on, in 3 weeks we could have, or whatever it was, 5 or 6 more billboards up there. And Marty was talking about doing all the days at once. Do you need our help on that, or is that something you would just go for as an absolute emergency stop for at least a month or 2 so that we can get these hearings, so that we can get to the interim zoning? What can we do here? Because it's going to be an extremely defeating purpose if we make an attempt and try to carry through something on interim zoning, and we all try very hard, and while we're having the meetings, the boards are going up, and once 5 to 10 more boards are going up, there's really not much point in even trying to zone for them because it's over with. There are already so many there now that it's practically destroyed the area, so anymore is just, so we're really looking for something that's an absolute emergency.
I think what the commissioners need to do is meet with our legal staff and see what we can do first. And if you want to call me like on, I don't know what we've got scheduled for Friday afternoon, but if you'll call Friday afternoon, maybe by then, Marty, is it possible for you to give us any indication of what we might do by Friday, or should I tell these people a week? Or?
Well, I have no idea because Mike's going to have to be involved in this, and I have no idea.
Could I take a stab? Please do. And I could be so far off, but if you're not serious about planning and zoning, then, you know, I don't see that we can do anything. If you don't meet together in a series of meetings and involve as many landowners as possible and make your compromises and decide how you can live with it, don't wait till it gets to us and we have 50 people saying no. Come with something that this, are you not a community, you know? Then, if we can see your planning, I believe we can do an emergency zone. I don't know how soon we can. But we can't stop what's there. You know, this really is a democracy, and those folks acted under the current law. And we probably can't do retroactive on it. If you are so discouraged that you just don't care about the future, then you're not a community. I think you have to ask yourself, can we grow together? Do we care how we're going to grow? Can we make the kind of compromises it takes to live together, or do we just stand around and spit at one another?
I think we are, I really do. I think we are.
But we're going to need some things you agree on. Don't just tell us what you wish we do.
Well, it seems like in this kind of democracy, in this case, the billboard companies, and maybe next it would be a toxic dump, they can go ahead and do what they want to do without consulting the community, and all we can do is try and catch up with it, running behind. What it sounds like you're saying is there really isn't anything we can do.
I didn't
If
say
we have to
that.
have several more weeks of meetings.
Yes, you do.
And as I said a minute ago, my question never got answered. Is there anything we can do to stop them from putting up a billboard this week?
No. The answer is no.
So the same thing could happen if they said, well, they got a permit from the state to put in a toxic waste dump across the
I
road.
don't know that
and
they
could do
can
that.
comply with the toxic waste state statute. I really don't know that. And, you know, I'm not dealing with that. I'm dealing with what I think I can understand, which is this community and what we can do to help you. But we can't solve problems by erasing what other people have done with all the rights that they have. You know, I know what you wish. I know what I wish.
I don't think we're asking to erase that. We're just trying to see if there's any kind of a legal stay that could be put into
I
effect.
just said what I thought we should do.
The answer is no. There's no
Right.
kind of
Not
legal
immediately.
stay.
No.
So in the interim, we should try to put something together and hope that this gateway clause may
I wouldn't count on the gateway.
Well, no, but it's a
I
thread, and
think
we're
what you
grasping
can
at.
do is to deal with some zoning in your area.
So you want petitions from us, you want maps with it delineated? what
I
area
want
we're
you to
talking
work
about?
together as a community and see
Well, that's what we're talking about,
You
is
can
getting
agree.
together and
That's right.
getting these things
And I would
out.
say the next thing is that we can give you some support staff, but we cannot do it for you, and we can't give you staff for a long time. This is not going to be a forever. You need to be able to do it or get off the pot.
You know,
We have to deal with what we can deal with that's whole. And you can do it, but you all have to be together. And you're not.
what this lady said is that, Fern Hart said, and these people are telling us, is that you're gonna have zoning. You can't sit here and, if the law is the law right now and somebody's acted under the legal law, they have done it legally. And if you're gonna stop stuff in the future, and you're gonna go to the zoning, to a committee with something, and lay it down, you're gonna have to have an area, you gotta define what you wanna do in that area, you got to have 25 or 30 committee meetings, so that out of this, and you're gonna have to involve a lawyer that can draw up the legal.
That's what I'm asking her, do we need to go?
Yeah, you're gonna have to do that. But you're gonna have to have somebody that's gonna have to write up something, because so.
We can write up our own stuff.
I think you can draw some good pictures.
Data.
I understand very much what you're saying, Fern, and I do understand this, the process. My question was that I somehow see a slight contradiction between what Barbara is saying and what you're saying, because you're speaking in terms of the basic, full-fledged plan. What I thought I heard Barbara saying, and maybe I was wrong, was maybe temporarily, emergency-wise, something could be done about future billboards that already are permitted. We could maybe do something about while we're holding these meetings, just a one-month thing. And I thought you said there was a possibility of that.
Maybe you misunderstood me a little bit. I am going to ask Jim Weaver if there is any way that the State Department of Highways can withhold permits from this point forward while there is a process going on. And I don't know whether they're going to say you can or you can't. But if a permit has already been granted, I don't think there's anything under the sun that we can do.
The third thing you need to do, after you've done that, is to get support and some more chalk.
Hey, Jean, I'm supposed to try.
Get support within
established area.
This area.
Could you define what you need for support as far as
Support means
numbers or
agreement.
petitions or?
You need to get the people, you need to get the support of the people, voiced support, whether it's in the form of petitions or whether it's in the form of whatever, you want to have a gathering of all those people to voice that support.
And how can we document that to you? Do you want to be present at a meeting like that, or?
The legal way would be in the form of, well, in the form of a public hearing, which would have to take place. The legal sort of verifiable thing would be the signatures with addresses, COS numbers, whatever it is. So it could be verified that the folks who are supporting this are actually the folks who have responsibility because they have responsibility for land within that area.
Not because they drove by and didn't like the billboard.
Unfortunately, the way the rules work is that I live in Ravalli County. I can't sign a petition and have any effect other than a voiced effect on what goes on in Missoula County. Nor can I, if I live in one place, have any voice or effect on land uses that take place in a different zoning district. So that's how it works. And there may be people that will disagree with the scope of the land use of the rules, but as has been iterated a number of times, it's a democratic process and the majority has a right to determine its future. And as long as that future doesn't violate civil rights or property rights or take away rights, and there are very clear definitions as to what taking away those rights are, then I think he can probably be defended, if I'm not wrong. Now, what that also can suggest is the size of signs, the location of signs, the types of land uses in an area, so that it's probably unconstitutional to prohibit someone from having a sign because of First Amendment rights. But it is absolutely within the Constitution to set a set of standards applicable to everybody as to how, excuse me, where signs are located, how large they are, how high they are, just the way it is with buildings, in terms of setbacks, in terms of location, and by land use. And so those are things to think about because those are certainly, I think, and our attorney will have to back, or I go to Deer Lodge. Back us up on this, but as long as it's fair, not for making this explanation. Okay. I'm not giving